Okay, so you should have already watched a general lecture on perspective, and now we're going to do some in-class exercises on 1-point, 2-point, and 3-point perspective. So first, we're going to do 1-point perspective, and we're starting here because it is the easiest. And it's the one that you're most likely to have done before, like in a high school art class or something. Okay. So when you were out doing your en plein air drawing and you were working particularly on landscape, you probably accidentally did some 1-point perspective just based on your observation-based drawing. You've also, as we've been learning about shape to form and how to introduce value and looking at all those geometric shapes that we were drawing in our value exercises, you've also done some work with perspective there without knowing that's what you were doing. Also, when we talked about sighting, measuring, and mapping, one of the things you're looking at is how the relationship between different objects, and that is also part of perspective. So you've already been doing some perspective work without quite realizing what you were doing. And now we're just going to understand and get into the mechanics of it and learn it in a little bit more formal of a way. So what I want you to do is go along with me on these exercises about 1-point, 2-point, and 3-point perspective, on this one 1-point perspective, and draw along with me. So first I'm going to talk you through the steps, and then I'm going to have kind of a draw along with the steps. So listen first, and then you can start actually drawing. You're going to need a pencil. You're going to need your sketchbook, your smaller sketchbook. You're going to need an eraser, and you're going to need a ruler or a straight edge of some kind. So have those things ready. You can pause me now if you need to go gather those objects. Okay, so today we're going to practice, or for some of you who may have done this in high school, review 1-point perspective. So when we're talking about 1-point perspective, it's a drawing method using lines to create the illusion of space on a two-dimensional surface. 1-point perspective is one of the 6 ways an artist can create the illusion of space in a drawing. And that's kind of review after you've just watched my general perspective lecture. You probably are like, yeah, you just said this, I get it. But we're going to get, there's a little bit of review in each of these, but we're going to get specific and work on these particular kinds of perspective skills. The first step in 1-point perspective is to define our horizon line. Again, this is a familiar term. You just heard about horizon line. The horizon line is the line that divides the sky from the ground. It can also refer to a viewer's line of sight. So on this horizon line, since we're doing 1-point perspective, we're going to have one vanishing point. So it's very important that we next define this vanishing point on our horizon line. The vanishing point is a point placed on the horizon line where objects begin to disappear because of distance. It is a point of reference where our lines of perspective will recede to. You know how you're driving down the highway and you can see that in the distance it looks like the lines of the road kind of come together? That's because of the vanishing point on the horizon line. So that's receding lines and shapes and forms into the distance. The vanishing point must be placed on the horizon line in 1-point perspective. Because the horizon line continues indefinitely, the vanishing point can be placed off the picture plane. But for our purposes in this example, we want it to be on the picture plane on the horizon line because that's going to make it a little bit easier to visualize. The next thing we're going to do is draw the shape of the object that we will be drawing. So we're going to start with shape, and then we're going to create the form so it looks three-dimensional. In this case, the object is a cube, so the basic shape is a square or rectangle. It's a rectangular prism if it's a rectangle. It's a cube if it's a square, but you get what I mean. The next step is going to be to draw 4 lines from each of the corners of the rectangle to the vanishing point on the horizon line. I should not have to say this, but I end up with people turning these in every semester that did not do this. Use your ruler or straight edge to draw these lines. Don't just freehand it because it's going to look sloppy and not good. So use your ruler when you're drawing these lines. The next thing we're going to do is draw a smaller rectangle that touches all 4 of the lines that you just drew in the previous step. each corner of the smaller rectangle should intersect with these receding lines, okay? Next, you're going to erase any lines that you no longer need to reveal your cube or your rectangular prism. Okay, so let's do this and walk through. This is again where I've stolen someone else's hands from the internet. These are obviously not my hands, simply because I find it hard to take pictures of my own hands while I am drawing. Okay, so let's take a look at how one-point perspective is used in a drawing. We're going to start by drawing our horizon line. Then we're going to place our vanishing point on the horizon line. And again, you should have your nicely, correctly sharpened pencil, not like this dude's incorrectly sharpened pencil. Next, we're going to draw the shape that is going to become our form. Since this is going to become a building, we want this to be a rectangle, or maybe a cube if it's a kind of a squat building. Now we're going to draw the lines from all four corners back to the vanishing point. And in these step-by-step videos, as you probably know by now, feel free to pause me and until you have this step complete, and then start playing again when you're ready to move to the next step. So we're going to draw our lines that go from our four corners of our rectangle and converge or meet on our vanishing point on our horizon line. Then next, we're going to draw a smaller rectangle that touches the receding lines of each corner. And you'll notice that I walked through this first just with images without the hands in the way, so that you have that as a reference you can go back to if you need to. Because it's kind of hard to see what's going on when you have someone's hands and a ruler and stuff in the way. So you can also pause this and go back and peek at those if you need to. Okay, so we have our initial rectangle, we have our four lines receding to our vanishing point, and now we have our smaller rectangle that is touching all four of those lines. The next step is we're going to erase the lines that we no longer need so that we can reveal our form. And then we're just going to repeat those steps to create another form or another building. These will be buildings eventually in our drawing. So you just keep doing the same thing, and after you're finished drawing it, you can see the remnants of the lines in there. You just erase the lines where each building overlaps the other one, right? So you're going to continue doing this. You can do the same thing on the other side of the street. We're going to repeat these steps as many times as necessary to create multiple forms or multiple buildings. You're just going to keep using the same vanishing point because it's one-point perspective. So regardless of where in the picture it is, everything is going to that same one vanishing point. It doesn't matter if it's on this side or this side, all going to the same point, okay? You can also then add a road by drawing your two lines that go to that same vanishing point. You can then start adding in some details. You can add a center broken line or a double stripe line if you want. You can then go in and add a sidewalk. Just start adding some more little details. And just remember, everything in one-point perspective is lining up with that one point. You can add some windows and doors. Make sure that you are lining these up with whichever plane they're on. So on the plane facing us, they'll run parallel to the top and bottom of that initial rectangle that you drew. You can go in and add some value. And then if you add doors or windows on the side of your building that's part of those receding lines going back towards the vanishing point, you can set up guidelines for those that are also going to recede towards that vanishing point so that your windows or doors are in keeping with the perspective, right? You can add some happy little trees, you can add a fence, add some details to fully realize this drawing. But what I'd like for you to do is make a little scene for me that has at least 3 buildings, and one of them needs to be on the opposite side of the street. You can have more buildings, you can have lots of buildings, and then I want you to add a street and add at least a couple of other details like trees, like a fence, like a sidewalk. You can get creative with it. There could be a happy little dog, I don't care. But add some information so that I understand that you get how perspective works, how one-point perspective works. Okay, and then you're going to post this in the discussion that has our perspective exercises, our in-class perspective exercises. Okay, so here we've got to continue a little bit of detail. You can put a sun and clouds in your sky. This has a little mountain range in the distance to make the drawing more interesting. You can kind of make it your own, but just make sure that it demonstrates your knowledge and that you've understood the concept of one-point perspective. Okay.